he ain't playing, he ain't playing, he ain't playing. That's what God was telling me today. I was thinking on this situation. I got a chance to read Proverbs 6 today, and I was going back and forth on it. And what God just let me know is like, I ain't playing. Like, I ain't playing with this stuff. And in Proverbs 6, it was all about debt. And so I wanted to call a bunch of different people in my life to see, like, okay, what is your vision of debt? And I got to talk to my wife. I got to talk to my brother. I got to talk to my friend Greg. You know, I got to explore these different facets and different perspectives. But it was incredible because with debt, I wanted to, first, I wanted to take it to the Word because 3,000-year-old wisdom, and I wanted to go to the source, right? But then I wanted to kind of get people's perspective on it, people who are living life. And, you know, some amazing, amazing perspective. Proverbs 6, these little inch stones, these little tiny things. Imagine this little tiny inch stone that's in my hand. That little tiny thing can turn into a milestone. What are the little things that we can do to shift our perspective on debt to be able to help us to create freedom ultimately? Well, that's what we're going to be going over today, the corresponding proverb for the corresponding day. So why don't you say we get this party started?
Nothing more on my mind. I got to shine, so every day I grind. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over again. Make no mistake, we continue to win. Defeat never known, cause I will not lose. They wanna mimic my moves, but can't walk in my shoes.
I ain't playing. Well, I ain't playing about the Vibe Room, which is coming July 23rd. Thank you to Mr. Justin Williams, Patrick Packer, and Kevin Borland for being our alliance partners. Also, thank you to Gino, if you're listening, because Gino and Tiffany are going to be there. They've been supporters of the Vibe Room since the very beginning, been supporters of the podcast, and I'm just a huge, huge fan of theirs. And I want to thank you both because it means so much to me for you guys to tune in, to listen, to watch. Also, too, at the Vibe Room, it's a live version of the podcast there in Salt Lake City. I'm actually, after today's podcast, I'm going to release the link. We got very limited tickets. We only got about 10 tickets left until it's sold out. It's virtually sold out, but we only got 10 tickets left. And it's going to be an incredible, incredible time. Mr. Roy Tuscany is going to be there, founder of the High Fives Foundation. He was an extreme athlete and had a spinal cord injury. And as opposed to, you know, kind of wallowing in his stuff, he chose to adapt and destroy any barriers, boundaries that were around him or myths that they had about what he could do as he moved forward. And he's now has a foundation, a nonprofit called the High Fives Foundation, in the top 5 nonprofit foundations throughout the world in the top percentage. And he helps spinal cord injury victims to experience things that they wouldn't otherwise do. And we're going to spend time with him. We got Miguel Mendoza that's on the music aspect of it. It is going to be unbelievable. If you haven't got your tickets, check out on my social. I'll be doing that on Instagram and on Facebook, and I'll put the link up. I'll actually put the link in the bio here. So we go back to this thing, right? So the reason why we're here is the corresponding proverb for the corresponding day. And it's these little tiny inch stones, these little tiny things. I used to think that it was the milestones. Focus on the big, huge, milestone or the huge vision. And what I would get challenged with is sometimes I get overwhelmed. And so it's just about these little tiny inch stones. Don't focus on the milestones. Focus on the inch stones, the little thing that you could do today, the little actionable thing that you could do today that can change your life tomorrow, right? And a book that I would suggest that you read is called The Psychology of Money. This is one that my brother gave to me, and honestly, it blew my mind when it came to money and the perspective that we have, not only in the world, but especially here, targeted in America, about money, and you'll be blown away. It's called The Psychology of money. I'll put the link in the description also, so you guys can check that. If you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and subscribe, leave a comment, and share it with a friend. But we go through these little Inchstones, and what I do is I test it back against 3,000-year-old wisdom, and so I go through the corresponding proverb for the corresponding day. I'm using the NIV version, and this is not from a religious standpoint. It's not from a ritual standpoint. This is just from a relationship standpoint. I want to have a relationship, and on my walk this morning, what God was talking to me about was debt. And it wasn't just about financial debt, but it was about personal, professional, spiritual, financial debt. Like all those things. What are we indebted to? Because once we're indebted to something, it has control over us, right? And what God wants us to do is he wants us to be free, and free in a relationship with him to be able to do exactly what he'll have us to do on that particular day. And that freedom will come when there's no debt. But it was incredible because I got a chance to talk to a couple of different people today, and they had different perspectives on these things. But let's go right to the proverb, because I want to run this down. This was incredible, and sometimes I move a little fast. If you do want the notes, the actual handwritten notes, just shoot me a comment. Shoot me a comment, send me your email, and I will email you over. You can either do that. I wouldn't put your phone number in the comments, but you could comment me, you can hit me with a comment and say that you would like to get the notes, and I'll send them over to you. I'll send you the PDF. I have a Remarkable tablet, which if you don't have a Remarkable, I would suggest using this. I cracked mine, so I got to get the screen done or just get a new one. But this is a digital tablet, and I've got my handwritten notes that I wrote today, and I'll send them out to you. If you're listening on Apple or on Spotify, hit me with a comment. You can do that. You can leave a comment in there and make sure that you rate it and, do those things. So Inchstones, and he ain't playing. 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 This was a big one that God was talking to me today. And so the first one in this is in Proverbs 6, and I'm in the NIV like I talked about earlier. So I'll go to this. In verse 1, it says, my son, if you have put up security for your neighbor, if you have shaken hands in a pledge with a stranger, if you have been trapped by what you said, ensnared by the words of your mouth, so do this, my son. Free yourself, since you have fallen into your neighbor's hands. Go to the point of exhaustion and give your neighbor no rest. Allow no sleep to your eyes, no slumber to your eyelids. Free yourself like a gazelle from the hand of the hunter, like a bird from the snare of a fowler. And so in point number 1, in verse 1 through 5, it talks about staying out of debt, and if you're in it, don't sleep until it's gone. Now, again, I got to hear different perspectives. My big brother Rob, when I was talking to him, he told me, he said, freedom and being able to self-sustain, right? And being able to be self-sustainable, that you didn't have to rely on anybody and have freedom. I talked to my friend Greg this morning, and he said, this is the reality. He said he had some debt, some credit card debt, and he paid it off. And when he paid it off, then they actually dropped the limit of his credit card. So when that happened, so you can imagine, say, let's just call it, say you have $100,000 in a credit card limit. You have spent $60,000 on it. You can imagine if you paid that down to $10,000 and then they dropped your credit limit to $10,000. Now you're at 100% of your debt to credit ratio, which would make your credit score go down as opposed to up, even though you paid off some debt. And so when he told me this scenario, I was like, wow, okay. So I was looking at debt in a little bit different way. And so, again, there's different perspectives on it. But when I went to the biblical part, it said, stay out of debt. And if you're in it, don't sleep until it's gone. And so let's think of this not just in the financial side, but imagine if you have a debt with a friend. Imagine if you have a debt in a relationship. Imagine if you have a debt just in business, as far as these people have done this thing for you, and you maybe, you feel like you're indebted. And I asked my wife, I said, how do you feel during it? And she said, I just don't feel good. I feel insecure. I feel down. And I was like, wow, you feel all those emotions just because of this one little word, debt. So as we move on, is if we're to stay out of debt and if we're to not sleep until it's gone, it's amazing because with God, what he'll do is he'll then help us to understand, like, how do we build so it won't happen? And in asking that question in verse 6 through 11, it goes right through this. And this is probably one that you guys have heard before. Go to the ant, you sluggard, consider its ways and be wise. It has no commander, no overseer or ruler, yet it stores up provisions in the summer and gathers its food at harvest. So, and then from 6 to 11, what it talks about is it builds slow, right? Build slow, work together, and build inchstone by inchstone by inchstone. That's what the ants do. And if we study them, then we see that they have no overseer, no ruler, but they all get it done. And if you've heard, you hear this on social, you hear this like self-discipline or discipline is these big things. And it's amazing because what God says is like, I created the ant. I created the ant. So someday you would look at it and say, and I can use it as an example. As opposed to studying all of the creation, why not study the creator, the one who actually made all the stuff, and then ask him? And so in this, he says two things in how to build it. Build slow and don't be lazy. That's it. Imagine if wealth building was that easy or that simple, and that staying out of debt was that simple. Build slow and don't be lazy. What my brother said this morning on the call, which was so great, he just said, if you don't have enough money, just don't buy it. Wow. Well, then I talked to my buddy Greg, and he said that there was good debt and bad debt, and I wanted him to explain it. He said, when you're buying a home, obviously most people don't have, $500,000 or $250,000 or $1 million just to drop on a home, so they use debt to be able to finance the home. But it's incredible because as we look at this thing, what God says is build slow, just don't be lazy. And we've talked about this in the past, but just to work your land, like if you work your land, it's amazing what God could do when we just work our land. I wrote down here is watch out now. And watch out now is just what's coming if we don't listen, right? So the first point was just stay out of debt. Like if you're in it, work your butt off and don't sleep until it's gone, right? Don't let other people sleep until you are out of their debt. And so imagine if we just gave more than what we received. If we did that, we would never be indebted to anybody. And, it's incredible too for me because I find that when I'm in debt, then I act out of character. And when I act out of character, then I have the tendency to get things that are outside of my character. Okay, so watch out now, verse 12 through 19. In 12 through 19, it goes through and it talks about all the things that will happen in the event that you just disregard what God told us. He said what will happen. First of all, we'll start to talk about it. Second, we'll see it. And when we see it, this goes to comparison, right? So once people start talking about it, especially social, I was talking with my buddy today, and he said he deleted all his social media off his phone because the stuff was the voices were just too loud. And as they were too loud, what he said was like, he's hearing it, right? So it first starts with the mouth, then it goes to the eyes, then it goes to the feet, then it goes to the fingers, then it goes to the heart. Watch this. First we speak about it, then we start to look for it, then we start to take action on it, then it starts to ingrain and be a part of who we are and what we do, and then ultimately it drops down into our heart. Once it drops down into our heart, disaster will come in an instant, and you will be destroyed with no remedy. That's what it says. Now, this was interesting to me because in verse 16 through 19, it says 6 things the Lord hates, 7 are detestable to him. Haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises evil schemes, feet that are quick to rush into evil, a false witness that pours out lies, and a person who stirs up conflict in a community. Watch this. If you read inside there, it goes through eyes, tongue, hands, heart, feet, lies, conflict. But what God gave us was a remedy for this, right? And so in staying out of debt, he said, with your eyes, use your eyes to focus. Don't use your eyes to look on to something else that you don't have. And the comparison. And even in the greatest times in our entire life. So what my brother was telling me, he just had a phenomenal time. And even in the greatest times, we could still look out and say, yeah, but that person has a little bit more. Oh, yeah, but it would be nice to have this, as opposed to just staying exactly where we're at, focusing on those little tiny inchstones and realizing that we may not be exactly where we want to be, but we're definitely not where we used to be, and we should thank God for that, right? So watch this, the eyes. He says he hates haughty eyes, but if you use your eyes to focus, they work out well. He says a lying tongue. Imagine this with your tongue. Imagine if your tongue just told truth. He says hands that shed innocent blood. Imagine if you use your hands to just be able to create kindness. A heart that devises wicked schemes. Imagine if you use your heart for discretion, for you to say, that's really cool, but it's just not for me. And then we took our feet, right? And as opposed to feet that are quick to rush to evil, we took those feet and we slowed them down a little bit. Imagine a false witness pours out lies. Imagine those lies if we flipped them around and said, I want to create honor. And then a person who stirs up conflict in their community, imagine as opposed to stirring up conflict, you just contributed to every single environment that you walked into. Pow. He gives us the pitfalls of debt when we get into it, but also he gives us the remedy to be able to get out of it. And imagine this. Imagine the challenges that we'll have, right? If we start talking about it, we start seeing it, we start doing it, it starts becoming a part of us. It gets into our heart. Disaster will come in an instant, but it's actually not in an instant because it started with our words, because we spoke that into existence. But then he says, well, if you're in it though, this is how you can fight it. This is how you could fight debt and get out of it. And this is how you could go with no sleep until it's gone. Focus, truth, kindness, discretion, slow down, honor, and contribute to every single environment and person that you're around. Now imagine this. Now he starts to get into it, and he starts to say, work your land. Like in verse 20 through 29, he finishes up with this stuff, right? Is just work your land. If you just work your land, and I hear this all the time, and it's very tough because there are so many shiny things out there. There are so many shiny things that people are doing that I'm like, oh man, that would be cool. That would be cool. That would be cool. That would be cool. And then I realize I got to work my land. What's my land? And I'll give you an example. What I ran around and I saw all these different things. What my land is to do keynote speaking for companies, organizations, and conferences. And what do I speak on? The vibe. And what is the vibe, right? It's the energy. It's not the energy that you walk into, that you bring into the room, but the way in which people feel when they leave. What components does the vibe have? Well, it's the culture, the systems, the productivity, the innovation, and the ability to adapt immediately. And how can we construct this? Through our heart set, our mindset, and our skill set. And when we align those, we create an irresistible vibe. Now, how can that apply in your business? Well, it's not your leadership that matters. It's not your culture that matters. It's not your systems that really will never work anyway. It's the way that people feel about all of them. That's my wheelhouse. That's my land. That's what I work. And as long as I'm working that, it's amazing, because then I get a chance to be able to see the great spoils of that. But when I try and work somebody else's land, that's when I get in trouble. Podcasting, my land. Podcasting, keynote speaking, my land. Vibe Room, live version of the podcast, right in line. Working my land. What is your land? Have you figured it out? If not, just take some time. Think of this. Focus, truth, kindness, discretion, slow down, honor, contribution. And zero in. Work your land. In this, it talks about in verse 20 through 29, listen to your parents. And I put down a heart and neck. So God asked to store it up in your heart and to wrap it around your neck. And imagine if you had something around your neck, it would protect your heart. So put it into your heart and then protect your heart. It will guard you, right? And what it says in here is that it will guard you when you're walking, sleeping, and when you awake. And think about it. Outside of that, there's pretty much nothing. It will guard you when you're walking, when you're sleeping, and when you're awake, and when you wake. It will be a lamp. And the reason why it'll be a lamp, because it'll light up, but it'll expose the shiny stuff, which will cause comparison, which will cause us to play with fire. Right? So verse 20 through 29 is all about just working our land. And what God keeps telling us is just listen to your parents, put it in your heart, guard your heart. Right? And then this wisdom and these principles will help to be a lamp to your path, a lamp to your feet. And why do we need that? Because it'll light up and illuminate all the shiny things so we can expose them for what they actually are. And that shiny stuff, if we follow it, will generally lead to comparison. The comparison will lead to playing with fire, and generally playing with fire will lead to debt in some way or shape or form. What he pleads with us in verse 30 through 31 is just honest work. Just honest work. And when we do honest work, guess what happens? When we do dishonest work, guess what happens? Dishonest business, he cautions us from. And as we finish up today, it's this. There's a place where there's no coming back. And I was talking to my wife about this because what he said was focus on your land. When you focus on others' land, you will go into debt. Focus on your land. What is your land that you can work? Right? And it was nuts because what I found was when I focus on somebody else's land or somebody else's purpose or somebody else's work or whatever everybody else was doing, then I start to compare myself to them. Once I compare myself to them, then I go and spend money, energy, or time that I don't have to be able to get what I think is great that they have. And that takes me into debt. And when I get into that debt, what I start to do is I start to say, oh my gosh, I need to quickly get out of this debt. So I'm willing to do anything to get out of debt. So the quickest way is to maybe start focusing on everybody else's, which when I focus on everybody else's, it causes more comparison, which causes me to go deeper into debt, which causes me to compare myself more and go after shiny things and causes this circle to continue to happen. But if we're in it, just stop, slow down, and say, he gave us the life preserver, right? He tossed it out to us. Focus, truth, kindness, discretion, slow down, honor, and contribution. And imagine that. Imagine if we realized that if you did dishonest business, you could flip it around. But once we start to go down that place of trying to work somebody else's land in verse 32 through 35, he actually, in the verses, it talks about adultery. But what I translated this morning is that he wasn't talking about adultery as far as taking on somebody else's wife, literally. What he was saying is, if you're taking on somebody else's land, like you're taking on somebody else's purpose, you're taking on somebody else's path, it's the same. It's being adulterous in your relationship with yourself. And that there's no coming back from that. And so as we finish now is just that God doesn't want us in debt to anyone or anything, because when we are, the debt becomes our God, and he doesn't share his glory. He ain't playing. It's amazing how he brings it right back around. And just a quick review on this. Watch this. Stay out of debt. If you're in it, don't sleep until it's gone. How can you build so it won't happen, so debt won't happen? Build slow and don't be lazy. Watch out if you think that debt is something that you want to play with. First, it'll come through talking about it. You'll see it. Your feet will start to move towards it. It'll become ingrained in your fingers, and then ultimately a drop in your heart, and then disaster will strike in an instant, but it wasn't an instant. It's because you talked about it or you let yourself hear it in the first place. How can we remedy it? Focus, truth, kindness, discretion, slow down, honor, contribution. How do we come back to center? Simply work our land. Work our land. And when we work our land, it'll be a lamp to our feet. And that lamp will light up the shiny stuff, which will stop us from going into comparison, which will stop us from playing with fire, which will stop us from going into debt. Honest work, honest pay. Dishonest business will crumble. How do you come back from that? We just talked about it. Where there's no coming back from. Verse 32 through 35, when you try and focus on other people's land. And what God is saying is just, I don't want you to focus on somebody else's land. I don't want you to be in debt, because when you go into debt, that debt will ultimately become your God. And I ain't sharing my glory with anybody because I ain't playing. Make sure you leave a comment, drop a note. I would love to hear your side of what debt means to you, because I'm not saying that I have the answers. I'm just studying. I love to be able to take this stuff in. And if you have a different viewpoint of debt, send it out to me. I would love to be able to hear it. What I would challenge you to do today is take Proverbs 6, read these 35 verses. It'll probably take you 3 minutes. And what I'd like you to do is write down one verse, just one verse that hit your heart. Write down why it hit your heart, why it meant something to you. Then I want you to write down what it made you think about specifically in your life. And then I would like you to write down how you can apply that principle as you move forward in your day today to be able to make your day better. Corresponding proverb, corresponding day. My name is Kelly Cardenas, and guys, the Vibe Room is coming July 23rd. Come check it out. Patrick Packer, thank you. Justin Williams, thank you. Kevin Borland, thank you for being our alliance partners. We're going to be at the Edison House in Salt Lake City. Get your tickets. Have a wonderful day. I'm officially off the hot seat. Peace, love, and soul.
On my mind, I got 2 shines, so every day I grind. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the